The Money Show.
Personal Finance with Warren Ingram.
Well, Warren Ingram is a certified financial planner at Galileo Capital, and tonight we're talking about stokvels, how they help you save and invest your money. You might well have a question about stokvels, about your stokvel, about how it's worked for you. You may just be getting started in the stokvel or be considering it. Good to hear from you tonight on 011 883 0702 and 021 446 0567. Voice notes as well, of course, on 072 702 1702. Happy to take your requests in that day. In that way. Warren, good evening. I mean, we need to start with the fact that stokvels are huge. They've been around for a very long time. And I mean, more than 11 million people belong to a stokvel in South Africa. That's a massive number.
It is a massive number. And it's one of those things, it almost seems to be kind of in the hidden economy in South Africa. You know, if I went to the National Stokvel Association's website to have a look at the size of that stokvel economy or ecosystem, and it's about 50 billion rand moves through that ecosystem. And I can tell you, when I was studying my financial planning exams, there wasn't a chapter or a section on stokvels. And I really feel it should be. It's a massive part of our savings industry in South Africa. And I actually think it's kind of one of our superpowers, stokvels.
So, I mean, they do, and I mean, in many cases, they really change lives. They've made a big difference to people. They've brought discipline to people as well, and that matters too.
It does, and I think it does a couple of things which apply to good human behavior. So one of them is, there's a reason why more people get fit when they belong to a running club or a sports club or any kind of a group, and that's because you've got positive peer pressure. If you make a commitment to develop a good habit, whether it's a savings habit or an exercise habit, and you've got a group that you've got to report to, whether it's once a week or once a month, it becomes much harder to kind of just let your good habit slide. And so you almost get guilted into doing the right thing. And that's one of the really powerful things about a stokvel is you all get together probably once a month and you sit down and you commit to a goal. And, depending on the goal, it could be, we're each going to put in a certain amount and it's the same amount to each of us every month or whatever the deal is. And it's usually with a community of people that you know reasonably well. So sometimes, it's kind of colleagues in a workplace. Sometimes it's family members. Sometimes it's neighbors. But you've got this very positive dynamic, and it's people that know you, people that you trust, and then people that are there to hold you to account. And lastly, it's a shared goal. All of you are working towards something, and there's a bit of transparency there. So, I mean, what an amazing way to kind of use human behavior to do something good for ourselves.
Okay, telling the difference between a good one and a bad one, and you might well have a story about this. If you do, 072 702 1702, the difference a stokvel is made in your life. So firstly, the basic rules, and are they written down? And this seems to be one of the fundamental distinctions between a good stokvel and a poor one.
Yeah, I think, maybe if you go way back, there was no such thing as a constitution for a stokvel or kind of a set of rules. People got together, they discussed it with each other, and you lived in small communities, and no one traveled much. So the commitment was there, and everybody was clear about what was going on. But over time, as the stokvel kind of ecosystem has grown, these are now often very big organizations and ecosystems, and so it's absolutely key that you develop a written set of rules about what are we doing, what happens, how much are we paying, and then what happens if someone misses out, someone doesn't do the job, and when are we allowed to access the money? So all the rules about a stokvel should be written down, and they should be clear for all of us to understand if we're going to join the group, and we should each sign them. And then, surprise, surprise, when a dispute comes, we go to the thing we've all signed, the agreement we've all made, and we go to the rules. And if you think about South Africa as a country, I think our constitution has saved us a few times in the last few decades. And exactly the same principle applies in a stokvel. When emotions are high, people are under duress and acting badly, you go back to the constitution and you set out what was agreed and you stick to it.
Can you, I mean, are they hard to write? Can you get a copy of one somewhere that might help as a guide?
Yeah, so I went and found two sources. So one is the National Stokvel Association of South Africa, and the second one was the Stokvel Academy, and both of them very kindly offer templates, constitutions. And what I like about them is they're written in plain language. It clearly wasn't written by a lawyer, with massive legalese that no one can understand. It was written so that all of us ordinary South Africans can read it, and sets out exactly what's there. And I think, just to be very clear, what it should show you is who's the chairperson of the stokvel, who's the treasurer. And the treasurer is important in this instance because that's the person that controls the money. And then it should have a couple of other rules about how is the money allocated, and when do we pay out? Do we pay out once a year? And what happens if someone falls behind? What happens if someone leaves the stokvel, moves towns or moves cities? So all of that stuff will be in the constitution. And I think, for me, these are not big money-making schemes where you've got organizations trying to profit off you. If they give you a constitution, you can make it yourself, and you can control it yourself.
Okay, you need more than a constitution to run a country. You need more than a constitution to run a stokvel. There must be a couple of habits that you should get into. And one of the problems, I am sure, I sort of, just thinking this through, is the money's contributed. Where does it go? Whose bank account does it sit in?
So I think it's part of the reason why some people have got some horror stories around stokvels, because in the past, the banks weren't really set up to help at all with something like a stokvel. And so either, one person, opened that bank account in their own name, and then everyone deposited the money in there, or the money was stored in cash and kept somewhere. And we can both foresee what happens when either of those scenarios arrive. And so, even if someone's, who's acting as the treasurer and opens a bank account in their own name, that person, if that person dies, or that person's account gets defrauded, or something goes wrong, they get divorced, they get into money trouble themselves, and the creditors come after them. Anything like that could cause the whole stokvel to be compromised. So the first thing you do is you make sure that you open a bank account which is designed for a stokvel. And the benefit of that is that you can have multiple people who are authorized to release the payment. So in other words, it's let's say there's 10 of us in a stokvel, and what we agree is that at least 3 people need to sign, and authorize any payment from the account, and that stops the ability for one person to bypass the system, or two, and I think that's a very good idea. So number one, you definitely need a dedicated stokvel bank account, and if you go and look on the websites of all the banks, they all have some kind of an offering for stokvels now, and that's a significant change from a good few years ago. So I think that's probably the one big trigger for me is, when I've heard stories go wrong, it's usually been that it's been in one person's name.
Okay. And then the habits that you should have. So you've got to have signatories to approve a payment. How transparent should it be? Should everyone be able to know how much money is in the account, how much money each person's contributed? I mean, I suppose you'd have a spreadsheet for that.
Yeah, so I mean, if you've got a group of people who are elderly and not computer savvy, by all means open the bank account for the stokvel, and then just keep a record book. Just have a book that the treasurer holds, and you have a couple of people signing for all of the entries that happen, and really what you want to know is who's put in the money, who's on time, is someone behind. And then what is the balance in the account, and that's something that should that should be shared with everybody. So fortunately, if you're not a computer person, pretty much most people nowadays are on a message group. So, you can open a group WhatsApp just for the stokvel. And so, at the beginning, of the week, if you're meeting on Friday, you can send, the treasurer can go and look at the bank account on Monday or Wednesday or whatever, get the balance and send it to everybody. And if you are computer savvy and, then run a group spreadsheet that everyone can look at, on Google, where you can do a shared drive or something like that. So what you can do is just have all the records of what's gone in, what's gone out, what are the balances, and allow everybody access to that. And so, it's different to the bank account. You don't necessarily want to have everybody having access to the bank account. You want a limited number, but surely, everyone can see what's gone in and what's gone out. And I think that transparency will help a lot, for people that are planning, number one, so they know if they're expecting money at the end of the year, are we on track when we're kind of halfway through the year, or are we not? And then secondly, if someone's behind, that's the positive peer pressure that we want, everybody to feel. Because if there are 10 of us and 9 have contributed and 1 hasn't, then that person's going to feel the pressure of having to, to do their part. Otherwise, they're letting the group down. And that's why, that's the power of the stokvel. So be transparent for avoiding conflicts, but also transparent to keep everyone going and working towards the goal.
So one of the things that must be interesting as well is you have a person who sort of, manages that. Do you need to rotate that person? A bit like, you're supposed to rotate auditors if you're a big firm or something.
I think you can. I mean, I think it's kind of a lousy job, right? You have to do all the bookkeeping for everybody, and everyone's going to be asking you questions all the time, and so it is a bit of it's not a blessing to give someone the job of treasurer. So I think it's good practice to rotate, both the chairperson and the treasurer. But that doesn't mean that you can't keep the treasurer. I think what's absolutely key is if you've got one person who is going to or has been a treasurer for quite some time, then you must make sure that at least 2 other people have signing in access to the bank account, so that they can compare what's going on in the bank account and make sure that the records for everybody are clear and transparent. So you might just find one person's very good with admin and they're happy to take on the work, but then for their own sake and for the sake of the group, you want to know that a couple of other people are checking every now and then. And it's very similar kind of a principle to a business. As a business gets bigger, you don't just want one person running the bank account and having access. You want a couple of people to kind of do at least one person loading payments and the other one releasing them. And, at least then the CEO and the financial director looking at what's going on in the bank accounts from time to time. And that same kind of good governance principle, absolutely applies to a stokvel.
Your questions for Warren, please, on 072 702 1702. Tabang's got in touch saying, hi, I'm 34. I'm about to buy my first proper car. Oh, what a big moment, Tabang. I found one I love. It's 350,000 Rand. The salesperson showed me they can reduce my monthly installment with a balloon payment. That makes the car cheaper, more affordable. A colleague at work says balloon payments are bad news. I'm confused. The lower monthly amount would make a difference. I'm worried, though, that my colleague is right. Tabang will have an answer for you from Warren in a moment.
The Money Show. Personal Finance with Warren Ingram.
8 minutes now to 8 the time. Talking stokvels, your stories, your experiences, your questions. 072 702 1702. First, let's see if we can help you, Tabang. Tabang about to buy a car, 350,000 Rand. The salesperson says they can reduce the monthly installment with a balloon payment. That would make the car more affordable. But a colleague at work telling Tabang balloon payments are bad news. Tabang saying the lower monthly amount would make a difference. Warren, I think Tabang has a wise work colleague, I must just say.
Yeah, it's one of my pet peeves, these balloon payments. So just to explain the principle, when you're buying a car and let's say you don't have money for a deposit. So what you can do is you can afford a monthly amount to pay off the car, but you don't have a lump sum that you can use up front. Then what happens is the dealer says to you, no problem. We can reduce your monthly payment and allow you to pay off a lump sum right at the end, and it's only in 6 or 7 years' time sometimes nowadays with these balloon payments, and so everything will be fine. And if you don't have the money at the time, you can just sell your car and buy another one and start again. So that's kind of the sales pitch, and most people who look at these balloon payments are kind of I guess overwhelmed, or the deal seems sweet to them because of the monthly amount. So they don't measure affordability by the total amount that they would have had to pay on the car over the life of the loan. What they do is they look at the premium and they say, well, it's only 5,300 Rand a month. That's fine. I can afford that. This is an affordable car for me. Unfortunately, the difference between a deposit and a balloon payment is that you pay interest for the entire time that you've got that balloon payment. So what's actually happening is someone is lending you, let's say on a 350,000 Rand car, they say there's a 150,000 Rand balloon payment after 6 years. It's not going to be 150,000 at the end. It's going to be 150,000 plus the interest that you're paying every single month over the lifetime of the loan. So your problem there is that you're not, this car is actually then just not affordable, is the short answer to Bang. What you rather need to do is actually build up a deposit and make the deposit big enough so that the monthly repayment gets smaller. And that's really the way that you do this. But please don't do the balloon. I just think you're in for a lot of interest payment.
I'm sorry to Bang, and I think, I think a lot of people, we all learn from actually talking about money things with people at work because everyone's been through similar experiences. Just returning to stokvels, Warren. So when you've got the money and you've got money in a stokvel and you've usually put it in a bank account somewhere, the temptation is to grow that money, and you do that normally through an investment. But usually investments will come with a little bit of risk. How much investment risk should you take? Should you take none if it's pooled money? It's not yours, it's everyone's.
So it really depends on the nature of your stokvel. So some stokvels, they're an annual thing. We all start in the beginning of January, and the idea is that we're going to put some money aside every month so that we all get a nice lump sum in December. If that's the nature of your stokvel, or anything where your time frame is going to be somewhere around a couple of months to, let's say 2 or 3 years, then you shouldn't take any investment risk. What you're looking for is an account that gives you the best rate of interest. It could be a fixed deposit, it could be a 90-day notice account or something like that. And what you want to do is earn as much interest with no risk as possible, because if you were to invest that in the stock market and you started in January and you wanted the money in December, you might find that things go really well for the first 6 months of the year and not so bad for the next 3 months. But then from October, you get a big crash and suddenly your investment is down by 30%. By the time you all want the money, at the middle of December. And so there is just no sensible point in taking investment risk for a short period of time. However, if you've got a stokvel where you're saying, we want to do something that's going to grow our money for a 5-year period, we're in the wealth building side, not the saving side, then certainly you can look at creating an investment account. And there are some platforms that run accounts for stokvels. They often call them a stokvel account or an investment club or something like that. And so they're actually designed for long-term investors where you can buy exchange traded funds or unit trusts.
Okay, so I mean, just like banks have accounts for stokvels, they have sort of investment things too. And I mean, I presume they would have some rules regarding how they manage it.
Yep. So you just want to be clear on, one is around the costs that you're going to pay, make sure that it's reasonable, and then sometimes they'll do something like let's say a monthly minimum for debit orders. So it's not probably going to be around about $500 a month if they do run debit orders for stokvels. And this is now we're talking about for longer term investments. Or they might have a minimum for lump sum. So they might say, if we're going to invest for you and it's a group of you, the minimum needs to be 20,000 Rand. That was one of the platforms I looked at. So just do a little bit of homework. That there are a few platforms that do this. Not all the banks will do it, but certainly some platforms will. And they'll have a few requirements. They're going to want to know everyone's details. So the whole FICA thing, identifying you from a ID and bank and proof of address point of view, but certainly then there are some options available to stokvels.
Warren, we've got 10 seconds left, but stokvels have been with us for so long, and I can't help but feel they'll be with us for a very long time, because for so many people they really work. They're incredibly powerful.
They are, and I think you just follow a couple of rules, have your constitution, and it is one of South Africa's superpowers. I think we should be exporting this to the rest of the world.
Warren Ingram, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. A financial advisor and co-founder of Galileo Capital. If you know someone who you're trying to encourage to join your stokvel because you want them to get the best, the savings habit, if you are considering it, you might want to send this to them as a podcast. It'll be available for you very soon in a few minutes, and then maybe just send it along to them. You might find that actually helps them and changes their life over the very long term.